Joe, you know who is back and going back to his old school? That is former left tackle or current left tackle. I didn't even know how you label this, but Kadyn Proctor, who went to Iowa after Nick Saban retired, he went back home, is going back to Alabama. I will give you the floor first on this. I think I'm going to get a little passionate, but what are your thoughts about Kadyn Proctor heading back to Alabama?
I said this to you on Twitter, and I'm going to just continually keep pushing the same argument the more times that situations like this arise. I know that it's not something that is actionable at the current moment. I understand that. I know that there is a lot of rules and regulations that we can't put in place right now because of how slow the political engine works and how slow just changes in college athletics work. But if these athletes sign NIL deals and they're agreeing to sign those deals to go to certain schools, they need to start holding them accountable to stay for more than a year, 2 years, something in line with that. If there is some way, and I don't know if we need collective bargaining to get here, I don't know if we need revenue sharing to get here, all of this stuff, there's so many steps that need to get there before we can get to this. But if guys are signing a deal that says I have to stay at X school for 2 years, we will not have a problem like the Kadyn Proctor situation. Because the reality of it is, and I agreed with what you said earlier, these young men are no longer held from being scrutinized for their decision making. This is different than the college football that we talked about 10 years ago. These guys are getting money. Yes, these guys are getting paid. They're young men, but they are still individuals that are getting paid for their services. It's okay for them to be criticized when they act as immaturely as this. So if they're going to act immaturely, there needs to be some form of contract that needs to start being standardized.
I understand your argument. I understand what you're trying to say and push forward. But let me tell you, I feel as if, Joe, that a collective bargaining agreement is something that we talk about in the media a lot, right? Like it's something that we're pushing to try to fix it. Signing NIL contracts where players can't leave, even though, Joe, I mean, even there's an argument because we have, through the courts, got determination that pay for play is illegal, right? Like we have gotten that understanding. My problem is how do we fix stuff now? Can we put a Band-Aid on things now? Joe, I'm not trying to be geopolitical here, but even in our society, there was a thing about defunding enforcement. And that is what the argument that we've had before in college football, mainly about defunding or doing away with the NCAA. You can't let this happen. Now, I do think that Alabama told the NCAA and others, if Kadyn Proctor came back, maybe the tampering that Iowa was doing, we'll just turn the other cheek if the kid comes back. I do think that there were deep room political moves being made by Saban and DeBoer and others at Alabama. That doesn't matter because, Joe, this is what we talked about last week with Saban. Saban's on Capitol Hill, okay, lobbying in reference to the portal and lobbying in reference to NIL. But then everybody turns a blind eye to some extent, especially at Alabama, Nick Saban included, when it benefits your school, right? Like when it benefits Alabama, they're defending Kadyn Proctor now, even though they hated him a month ago. The decision for him to leave Iowa and go back to Alabama, I got to admit something. It's soft. It's a soft move. I understand you leaving and wanting to go back home when Saban retired, okay? The problem with that is, Joe, we live in a society right now where if you can just do whatever you want, there's no accountability that we had, Joe, when we were growing up. You know, like, for example, if I wanted to quit something, my parents would always tell me, hey, you started it, you're going to finish it. Now, if you don't want to ever play again, you don't ever want to do that again, that's fine. You started something, you have to finish it. I think that Kadyn Proctor's move is soft. Now, I'm not going to get on the Iowa fans because apparently he was getting paid for from their collective. He didn't even go to practice. Like he was receiving benefits to be at Iowa. The problem is, I'm telling you, he's getting paid to go back to Alabama. He's going to be a part of their collective. Joe, quite honestly, college football is broken. I see a lot of big-time media people, Joe, that we respect very dearly, that say, well, it's not necessarily broken. The hell it's not. It is completely broken. And every time that you tweet out or you put on social media, oh, let's go away from the NCAA, that's fine. My ultimate question always will remain, who does enforcement? I have a solution, Joe. Can I tell you what it is?
Mm-hmm.
I think that the NCAA and the SEC, if you really want to start like really putting some enforcement down and getting back on the right track, if I'm the NCAA, I go to Greg Sankey and say, listen, can we for one time join hand in hand, arm in arm, and say, we're coming down on teams for tampering and start popping teams for tampering? You got Kadyn Proctor, Joe, who quite honestly, 5 years ago, if we would have found out that he got tampered with, okay, by the Iowa staff, Iowa would have been popped immediately. Like that would have not been tolerated. Now it's just, it doesn't matter. And kids being able to transfer is completely different than tampering. You can't have other coaches from other teams talking to players at other programs, telling them to come home. If I'm the NCAA, Joe, and I think that we as a media corps has to stand with them, even if we don't like them. I don't like them. Okay, I do not. Again, I can't preach this enough. But for once, can we try to get back on track here? At some point, somebody's got to get popped for doing something that's not in guidelines. Can we have some type of just, hey man, Kadyn Proctor, you can't do that.
I understand that there was an inevitable investigation and a self-reported tampering issue.
I just self-reported it, Joe, because he's on a live camera saying that he got tampered with. Okay. I mean,
I understand all that. I just come down on they hadn't conducted the investigation yet. Okay, so
they don't need one. He admitted it.
Okay? Just because he admitted it, they still need to conduct an investigation before anything happens, before they do come down on any punishments. But I don't disagree. Wait. I'm just saying though that I don't disagree with what you're saying. Though I know a little bit back before I was defending and saying that it really shouldn't be considered tampering, just texting a kid to seeing how he's doing. But I understand now after everything that's happened, yes, the conferences should be the ones who handle handing down a punishment for tampering. They should be the ones that are leading enforcement. If they catch something and if something is happening, they should be going forward the ones who handle enforcing such things, as you're saying.
If this would have happened to Alabama in the reverse order, they would be crucifying the kid on social media. They would be killing the kid because it's.
I mean, he's getting killed either. He's getting killed either way.
Sure, it would have been. I promise you, would have been 1,000 times worse than exactly like it was when he left Alabama to go to Iowa in the first place. It was abysmal. Social media about the kid was absolutely insane, and for him to come back, I would never. Anybody talks about me like I would have never gone back. It doesn't matter the school, but we have to come to we have to come to a place for college football. Financially, we're going to be fine. As a sport, we're going to be fine. There's no more money than you can really make. You're going to continue to make more money. You just cannot allow things like this to happen. Now, we'll talk about him on the field. It's a great addition, a re-addition for Alabama for him to be at left tackle. But if you think that Alabama wasn't tampering when the kid goes on spring break with former players, what do you think happened? Let me tell you what I know happened. When those kids were on spring break, coaches were calling their current players and say, oh, Kadyn Proctor's right there. Well, tell them I said what's up. You can't.
I think that's such an over assumption that something like that happened. Yes, it is. We were you there on spring break with him? Do you know that?
Confirmed it, Joe. We literally have.
What do you mean they confirmed it? Who confirmed that that coaches were calling Kadyn Proctor while he was on spring break? Who confirmed it?
Joe, do you really think that a kid like Kadyn Proctor was with old teammates on spring break and no coach at Alabama talked to him?
No, I think that the kid probably went on spring break and was hanging out with his buddies that he spent the whole first semester with, and he decided that he wanted to go
naive?
back.
Are you?
No, I'm not that naive. I think that you're over assuming. I think that you're overcomplicating what was. I know plenty of guys that I played with that would have been in the same situation. I had guys who transferred when I was playing in school that would come back and just show up on campus and would be in the dorms and hanging out during spring break or during winter break. Guys did that shit all the time. Guys miss their friends. That's what I think really happened is he went on a trip with his boys and then he realized he made a mistake. I don't think anyone picked up the phone and tried to recruit him.
Let me completely end this for you right here.
Okay.
So how does he go back to the University of Alabama and not talk to coaches?
Well, that can be initiated by him. That could be initiated by him.
They don't have to accept him. Do you mean to tell me that he's transferring back to Alabama and the coaches didn't know?
No, that's no. That's not what I'm saying.
Hold on, I let you go.
That's not what I'm saying.
Oh, well, when do you think that they talk to him?
I'm saying that he goes on spring break. He talks to his teammates. They convince him to come back. He then talks to the coaching staff. He reaches out.
And you think that those players weren't telling coaches that they're convincing him to come back?
Yeah, but the players talking to the coaches is different than Kadyn Proctor talking.
That's exactly what I just said was happening.
No, that's not. You implied that.
I said the coaches were talking to players that were with him on spring break and said, "Oh, Kadyn Proctor said, tell him I said what's up."
Maybe I misunderstood what you said.
That's exactly what I just said. My bottom line is, Joe, regardless, I am so sick and tired. Let me tell you what I'm sick and tired of. Every time something like this comes up, everyone wants to defend the player. It's time for a little bit of a reversal. It's time to say enough is enough. This is not the cherry on top with sprinkles like you're at a Sonic drive-in of what the sport has become. I don't know what is, and I am so pro player. Joe, as of last night, we have AYS has 17 players with NIL deals. 17, okay? I'm giving my own money for players to be paid, okay? The bottom line is, though, I understand, even though that we're a part of it, that there's got to be regulations. Joe, I have an attorney on retainer for this specific thing, that we're not violating stuff. At some point, can we man the fuck up and say to ourselves, enough is enough? Because you can only say so much that, it was legal in court. I don't give two shits if it's legal in court. What I care about is the health of the sport. And the health of the sport right now, week in and week out during the offseason, takes a massive dump on itself because they don't know what to do. It's like a baby with a diaper on. Oh, I poo-pooed myself. It continues to take a dump on itself.
I find it really ironic that a year ago you yelled at me saying that there needed to be, when I said that there needed to be regulations, you completely crapped on the concept of just having rules in general.
No, your argument was we have to regulate NIL. Was it not?
That's what this is. That's what this is. My argument is that we need to have rules for how NIL operates. And you said that because it's capitalism that there's no way to regulate it. That's not
you were
true.
Trying to cap NIL.
I wasn't trying to cap it. I was trying to organize it.
We literally had a video, and the title of the video was salary cap. And it was you defending.
No. I never. And also, having a salary cap, there's nothing wrong with that. But the whole point of everything that I talked about last year, a year ago, was saying that we need regulations in place that prevents all of this free movement. Look, at the end of the day, Blake, I understand
what does NIL have to do with what Kadyn Proctor just did?
Because he takes money to go to Alabama. He takes money to go to Iowa. He's probably taking money and getting paid to come back to.
This is a portal issue, Joe. It's not an NIL issue.
This is a portal. This is both. They're interconnected. We can't talk about both things.
Fair.
We're not talking about both things. They're always going to be interconnected. But look, at the end of the day, Blake, and I can't believe that I'm the one who's saying this because you're usually the one who says this. We're too far gone for anything to get fixed right this second. And the only way that this gets fixed is that if more and more messy situations like this happen, and then in 5 years, when there's actually been action, when these things actually move forward, that there is finalized new rules. I don't think that we're going to get anything. We're not going to get anything to change in the next 3 to 5 years. And I think in the next 3 to 5 years, Kadyn Proctor situations are going to continue to happen. And I don't disagree with you. I don't think
that's why you have to hit them with, my solution is, if you have something going on with tampering, you have to hit them immediately. Joe, what is wrong with suspending a kid if there's alleged tampering and then figuring out the situation? We do that all. We do this in the legal system with.
Well, you're saying are you saying hit the kid with tampering or hit the school with tampering?
Both.
You can't. You're not going to be. You're not going to be able to. Just like with the NCAA and Tennessee situation, where the courts ruled that the NCAA couldn't restrict a free market for a player. I don't believe that would be realistically possible for a conference to say to a kid because he's not an employee. He's not an employee. He's not in a situation where they can say you can't show up and play for a certain period of time. The conference can't suspend him.
What do you mean the conference can't suspend him?
For something like this, for operating in a free market where there's no guidelines or restrictions.
The conference has rules that coaches cannot tamper with other players on other programs.
They can hold the school. They perfectly agree that they should hold the schools accountable for.
You can't hold the schools. You can't hold the schools accountable and not the player.
You can't hold the player accountable for just acting in an environment that is a free market. He could not know that it's tampering or understand that it's tampering.
The kid knows it's tampering.
My big point here is that you can't restrict the kid because there is literally.
I'm not saying restrict him. What I'm saying
it is restricting him, telling him he can't play in your conference. That's a restriction.
No, I didn't say he couldn't play in the conference.
You're saying suspend him. You're saying
suspend until you can do a very quick investigation on. Did you, Joe, you know what it is? 1-800 call a head coach. Do you have coaches that talked to him when he was enrolled at Alabama? Yes, I did.
You can't suspend the player. You can't. You
Joe,
because of what we just
Joe, we literally,
but not for these reasons, for academic reasons, for previously when marijuana was higher.
He talked about academics. How is he academically eligible at Alabama when he wasn't there for a semester?
People move and transfer easily all the time. It is not hard to remain and get back on an eligibility track, especially when you're taking freaking online classes. Like most of these kids are just taking online classes.
You know what? I'm done. Fuck it. I'm done. Let the players do whatever they want. Screw enforcement.
Okay, but that's not the answer to this. That's not the answer to this.
It's the only answer that I keep getting from everybody in the media.
It's the only answer right now because, there's nothing. The NCAA.
You know what? Stand up and stop being not you. You know I love you. Stand up and stop being a coward and let's do something about it.
But the NCAA put their hands in the air and said that anyone could transfer as many times as they want.
No, they didn't do that. No, that's bullshit. They went to a West Virginia court and a court ruling, a federal court ruling said you cannot limit how many times that they could transfer. What they didn't say in there was, okay, they have to have right academic standards. Tampering was not a part of that. Joe, can we get to a place where a coach on another school's program can't talk to players on another program? Can we say, all right, that can't happen?
But hold the schools accountable. That's where the problems come into line.
Let's hold them accountable.
Okay. Well, the conferences need to be the ones who do it. I think that's where
he ain't going to do shit.
I mean, that's the problem there. That's the problem right there.
It's killing the sport. I don't care what it's killing the sport. Joe, how do you see Kadyn Proctor's situation and think to yourself that it's not killing the sport?
I mean, I don't think one singular instance of Kadyn Proctor doing this.
It's not one instance.
Well, it's the only known instance that we have. And if anyone else is doing it, it's back-end shitty players that are, probably not going to get onto the field. But Kadyn Proctor is a unique, rare athlete that it's a little bit different. But I don't want to go as far as to say it's killing the sport. And frankly, actually, I would argue that extremes like this make it easier to have examples to point to and say, we can't allow this specific thing to happen. That no one could have written or projected or guessed that something like this could have occurred. So we need this is a very specific random example that a kid transfers back, takes money, then leaves, and then comes back. There, no. Don't act like that this is something that people knew was going to happen, that kids were going to go back and forth to the same school. Don't act like that. Don't act like you predicted this.
I didn't deliberately say that Kadyn Proctor was going back to Alabama. But I did tell you a month ago, if you thought that the Wild Wild West, if he was crazy now, with the Tennessee ruling,
that's perfectly vague enough to say, yes, that there could be craziness. But my point is that we need specific horrible situations like Kadyn Proctor's to be able to point to be able to assess, address, and then fix these things in the future.
You got to fix the now, though.
But there's no way to fix it now.
There is. I'm giving you a solution. I just gave you a solution.
Legislation is going to constantly.
Last thing before we talk about him being back on the field for Bama. Okay. If we popped the coach for tampering, do you think coaches would be a little bit more hesitant to do it?
Yes, obviously.
Okay.
But I just don't. I just think what becomes. I just think what gets complicated though is that I don't know who is allowed to hand down enforcement anymore because of what happened with the NCAA and the Tennessee situation.
Well, you know who can, and nobody can do anything about it? The commissioners. And by the way, Joe, we still have where you can't transfer in interconference after this into the spring. So let me tell you, if a kid hit the portal in the SEC right now and wanted to go to another SEC school, he could get a waiver, but you know what he also could do? He could sue them and go to that school anyway. But the conferences have guidelines just like everybody else, but nobody looks at that. And here's another thing. Everybody looks at this situation as an NCAA problem. What do you mean? I see people say that the NCAA put their hands up. What do you want them to do? What guidelines could they have? Let me just ask this.
Okay.
Yes or no question. Were there truly, with everything that we're seeing going on in courts, was there really anything that the NCAA could have done when O'Bannon won his court case?
No. But
so why are we constantly putting this on their shoulders?
Because they're the governing body of college athletics. They have to be. The conferences aren't governing bodies. They are
governing bodies. That's bullshit. Because
collections of schools that organize media rights. That's what
they're
the
not.
intent
They
of a conference is.
Then Joe, why do coaches get show causes all the time?
They obviously can enforce things, but the governing body over college athletics, the main governing body is the NCAA. So obviously they're going to be the ones that are pointed to and saying, what are you going to do to fix this? Because that's what their responsibility is.
They can't do anything.
That's my point, is that we're not going to have anything that's going to be capably done until the federal government gets involved and helps provide the new path for this. And I have no idea how long that's going to take. I don't really care to find out how long it's going to take, because I hate, how the government works in politics. I hate how slow everything moves. But to kind of give a shitty response to this, there is no way to fix this right now. There's just not. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions, with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.